Different things to change the establishment, and then I have to go into the so-called real world, and I feel like for a lack of a better, I feel like, just hanging myself, because it's not shifting at least as fast as I want it to. And it seems like a lot of people are still jumping into these, like what you're talking about, what I call them as corporate holes, where they can grab onto a fight and think that somehow they're changing something, but really they're just feeding the system.
Corporate holes sounds like a union of prostitutes.
Oh, don't get Chuck going now. Oh, welcome, Daniel. Welcome.
Am I here?
Yes, Daniel Lewis Crumpton has arrived. Okay, now we can get into even stranger topics. Look, corporate holes getting together. Yes, I'm going to comment right now, Sherri.
Thank you, Daniel.
Just as a side note, they actually turned around and decided that the show we did, once again, this is the second time now they have decided that I cannot monetize the show that we did on the the structure of prostitution in modern society, and how there's only about 2% of women that exist that are not in some way prostituting themselves. They didn't like that show out on Google, and they've apparently demonetized that again. And explicitly told me that this was not something that was friendly for advertisers at large. I just want you to know that, even though,
Well, the thing about it is, as much as I want to, really rip you up over that and blah, 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 after that show, a lot of what I see in society is it's true. So,
it started making more sense, didn't it?
Oh, well, and yeah, it was in my face. I was thinking, oh my God, I wouldn't have even noticed it before. Thank you again. But it's true, because it's the way our society is set up to put, I'm not saying that women are put in a position. It's like a role. It's like, if you don't have to play it. That's true. But if you don't, you kind of either have to make your own, which some do, or you don't get it at all. You sit in the sidelines. Yes, and I'm not talking about sex. I was talking about.
I find no. I wasn't thinking of sex at that particular moment. I was thinking that it's funny to me that no matter what, you have to act as though it's not really our fault for perpetuating things the way they are. And I'm sorry, but you're willing to tell people that if they participate in the system, it might be partially their fault what's happening on the planet. But, participating in the prostitution rings that are, contained within the institutions, all of that is not really your fault because you're participating in it because you didn't have a choice. Well, nobody has a choice then, huh?
Men make us.
Oh, okay. For a change of subject. Daniel, help me here, man. I don't want to go through this again.
I'm scared of what Daniel's going to say now. I was okay with going after you, but Daniel, talk about something else.
You're okay with the loudmouth Italian yelling back at you and telling you different things and trying to hit you with some real stuff that you had to admit unfortunately was real. But it's okay to go to Daniel. He's the safe choice.
No,
okay.
He always brings the God stuff up to me, and puts me into place, reminds me of where my soul should be or something. Good Lord. And so then I feel that I have, on top of thinking I'm funny and all this other stuff, then I all of a sudden feel guilty.
Nice. How is that, Daniel? How do you feel about being the actual, ethical barometer for the witch who can seemingly do battle with me, is more comfortable dealing with you, and actually you help her put things in perspective? How do you feel about being that guy?
And DMT's got some residual effects, don't it, Sherri? If you're looking to me to be your moral compass, man, your ass is lost.
Well, I kind of knew that we were on the same track when, we did that one show together, and I had that little temper tantrum, and then you and I laughed about it for however long. I knew that we were on the same page, and And I kind of feel like if you make me feel guilty about something, if you start bringing something up and you start saying it like, because that voice thing, all of a sudden I drop into that, oh my God, like I did that. And, oh, I got to quit doing that. And I got to be a better person. And, oh yeah, peace, love, joy. I mean, come on.
Oh, I see. I need to smooth out my voice for you. Is that what has to happen?
Oh,
okay.
That's kind of cool.
Okay. I will speak to you in dulcet tones and make sure that you can follow my every direction.
I testify to you that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the only true. Joseph Smith is his true prophet.
You know what I was reading? You know what I was reading about earlier today? Speaking of the LDS,
What's that?
Is this massive database of people's genealogical records that they possess, that they keep in an underground bunker.
Yeah, man. They got to baptize the dead, dude.
Think about Rockefeller. Rockefeller was harvested or killed or died or whatever people want to say on the equinox, right? And so I think that they had to have added him. That's probably how they do stuff like that, is they added him to that box.
Man, you know what? Screw David Rockefeller. Charlie Murphy died today. I'm sad, okay?
Aww.
I'm serious. He did. He died today. This was the dude who gave us, the whole stories that fed Dave Chappelle doing, I'm Rick James, bitch. All right? This dude...
I didn't know who that was. That's funny.
That was Charlie. Charlie Murphy told Hollywood stories on the Dave Chappelle show. And I know Charlie Murphy from a long time. Of course, he's Eddie Murphy's brother, wound up looking a lot like him. But, 57 years old, he lost a battle with leukemia, was one of the funniest character actors I've ever seen in anything. A lot funnier than his brother as an actor, not quite as good as a stand-up, but definitely funnier than Eddie Murphy as an actor. Hysterical. Movies like CB4 and doing the voice on things like the Boondocks. Remember when we were watching the Boondocks, Daniel, and there was the two white guys, Eddie Wunsler III and Remy, Gin Rummy.
Are these the guys with the text messages back and forth?
Yes, one of them is voiced by Samuel L. Jackson, and the other one is Charlie Murphy, baby. That's him. Can you believe that? This guy passed away. And he was, again, the guy on the Chappelle show who did, what was he, when they did the whole, haters ball and all that, and the haters going back in history and all that, he was Buck Nasty.
Yeah.
Right? So you know what I'm talking about now.
Yeah,
right?
I know Charlie Murphy, man. That sucks, man. It seems like we got a lot of people who are crossing over, man, here recently. I wonder what that's about.
Yeah.
I wonder. Wonder.
And I'm not going to, man, I ain't in the mood to talk about the battle of the sexes tonight, Sherri. Maybe another night. I wrote an article not too long ago called Women Are Like Monkeys, Relationships Based on Survival. So.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me? And we're not going to, but you don't want to have this talk after you make a statement like that?
No, because the title is deceitful. You have to read the article for yourself,
I love it though, because the safe choice for you to talk to is the guy who calls women monkeys. At least I'm keeping them human and just saying they're prostitutes.
Wait. That's now that is a reference. That line is a reference to Mission Impossible 2. When the villain, Sean Ambrose, he says, women are like monkeys, mate. They don't let go of one branch until they get a firm grip on the neck. So I didn't say that. That's Sean Ambrose who said that. I just ran with it.
He talked about a little branch, and that's why he felt like he had to say that. Just going to say.
Yeah, so, Ooh. I mean, yeah. I'm Irish, whatever.
Well, I mean, that they got to have some kind of excuse for letting go of that branch. So they're like, oh, anyway.
So,
go ahead.
But anyway, no. So what are we talking about? Oh, yeah. Typically, I don't listen to your first hour on Wednesdays because I hate your guts, Chuck. No, just because I don't because I don't want any context. But I just got a new mic and all that good stuff when we were doing sound checks. I want to thank William von Strottenberg. Is that his name? Am I butchering his name? Crap. Anyway, my guy from Patreon. Yeah, Strottenberg, William von Strottenberg. He's been my patron since the beginning, and so I got a new mic. So the reason I was late today was I was pulling wires and putting wires back in and doing all that. But I was listening to what you guys were talking about, about, the 3 city-states and energetic ley lines and stuff like that. Am I kind of on point so far with the first hour?
Well, what we were talking about in the first hour, really, because Mark Windows went to this area called Smithfield, which is part of or near the city of London. I didn't quite get that, but it's an interesting area where there's a lot of like Masonic lodges around, and it's been often used as like a killing field.
Yeah.
And not just in recent times or not just at one point in history, but literally there is a monument to William Wallace having been executed there on that ground. And you know who William Wallace was.
Yeah.
Going on from there, there was, all sorts of martyrs that were killed there that were, Protestants who were, in objection to the Catholic Church in one way or another. Many executions of all sorts. There used to be a gallows. Lots of different slaughter going on there. And even today, there is like a meat market where, animals are slaughtered on site. All right. And it's just this very blood-soaked, very weird sort of area that we're doing a series on with Mark. So I'm trying to explain to people that whether they believe it or not, when you consecrate something with blood, okay, in such a way, and terror and fear and torture and all of these things, that there's a great deal of significance to this. And we're going to get more into that subject. Now, Sherri listened to most of that and started talking about, well, it's really wild how it's just like this pit of hell over in England. And I said, well, Sherri, there's a triad, which, goes from the Vatican to the city of London to the district of Semiramis. We often call it Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a significant thing that I bring up all the time, and I'm not the only one, obviously. Jordan Maxwell and I discussed this last week, and he said, you've got a perfect point, and I'm always surprised when people don't bring these things up. And I said, yeah.
Well, who is Semiramis?
Well, Semiramis is is an ancient god. Well, you know who Semiramis is, don't you?
Yeah, but I'm asking for the sake of your audience, because I remember right now we're going through Lent, and I remember, I know that I practice a craft. Chuck, I know you practice a craft. Me and you have been able to practice together in the metaphysical realms, which I think we actually need to start talking about a little bit more. But you and I both we know, we know about metaphysics, and we both have a unique approach to it. So, whenever Lent started, I asked a lot of my people out there who practice people I know. I didn't make them out of clay. Yeah. People I know that are spiritual. I think I asked them, I said, hey, what are you guys doing for Lent? And I got a lot of people who were either pagan or, kind of new agey, touchy-feely sweater people who were like, nothing. I'm not doing that. And I'm like, well, all right, but you guys are wasting a window that you could be piggybacking energy. Why are you turning your nose up to the official story of what Lent is, what Passover is, what Holy Week is? Why are you passing up this? Look, people like us, we look at the elite or the Illuminati or these people who are doing blood sacrifices and setting up city-states, and we fail to reverse engineer what they're doing. We observe it, okay, so they went through all the trouble of building 3 city-states with an obelisk and a dome just for shits and giggles, and we kind of scoff at it, but it's people like me, you, and Sherri who we do dabble in the metaphysical. It's, in my opinion, it's our responsibility to understand the science of why these people who do practice metaphysics for whatever agenda that they're propagating. It's incumbent upon us to study it, research it, reverse engineer it, and use this type of technology, because magic is a technology. It is. It's tapping into a source code without a physical interface, unless you count your body as a physical interface.
Exactly. Well, and I think what a lot of people don't understand is the body is it's a metaphysical interface, but when you actually look at the mapping, it's just like with the hand magic, which I talk about, or I've talked about for the last few weeks. Every finger represents a planet, which everybody's like, what the fudge does that mean? But it's not about the planet that it represents the energetic vibration that it puts out, right? The frequency that by using your fingers that you're pushing out of your body. And that can be tested. That's not hocus pocus. Now, when you add in magic and you start adding in dimensional realities and all these other things, all of a sudden you're opening up gateways and doorways to things that maybe are not seen by the naked eye until exactly that, until you're in that vibrational reality. So, go ahead.
Well, you know what it is that there is this understanding that people come to where, like, there is a separation between, metaphysical behavior and the actual scientific understanding of behavior. And I mean that in a lot of different ways. When we talk about, vibrations, that sounds like a new agey thing. But the truth is that the use of frequencies can be physically observed in a scientific sense in all sorts of ways. You can cause many different effects by exerting frequencies into the air, into the ground, into the plants. You can do all sorts of things with it. It's just that people don't necessarily know what the proper frequencies are or know where to begin studying this kind of thing. When we had Larry Woods on, remember we were talking about, this thing which looks like a religious symbol was a battery, right? And it's not that it's just a battery, and it's not that it's just a religious symbol. It is that it is, in fact, both. Mm-hmm. And many of the ancient peoples, like the Egyptians, which are often, turned to and completely misunderstood, they did not separate the two. It wasn't like, well, here's our religious practice and here's our science.
Well, I'll tell you what.
There was...
Me and
Go
you,
ahead.
We're Marvel fans here. And I think that anybody who is into the esoteric or the occult, if you step back and look at what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is doing, is absolutely telling. Okay, those are more than just comic book movies, and the way that they're arranging them like a jigsaw puzzle is, to me, fantastic. If you go to Thor, you'll see Thor explaining to a doctor, his girlfriend, whatever her name is, I can't think of her name at the moment, but he says, what your people called magic, we call science. And then when you get to Doctor Strange, when the Ancient One is teaching, a materialist, Dr. Stephen Strange, about the metaphysics and summoning energy from other dimensions, she says, if the word magic and spells is offensive to your civility, use the word program, computer program.
Bam!
These are two Marvel movies that are showing you opposite aspects, but they're saying the same thing. And she pulls out a book and she shows you, chakras and acupuncture points. And she says, all these are maps that people were allowed to see in part, but not in total.
Because if they showed people the actual chart, the actual body structure, all of these different things, where the chakras are, people, first of all, they can't comprehend beyond the 3D in most cases. But you start talking about this, we have been so depleted of this knowledge that now it is nothing but a fairy tale.
Well,
But I object to that, Sherri, and I'll tell you why. Right now, as we speak, if you seek that kind of knowledge, it is accessible. It's at the fingertips of anybody with an internet connection. Okay, you can learn about all of these different techniques and variations of them, every different way, the identification of, the utilization of, et cetera, et cetera. It is not as though the knowledge is absolutely hidden in the temples any longer, Daniel.
Let me add that an addendum to what you just said from a quote Christian point of view. Whenever you're in the Christian church, and this is going to be uniform across any religion, they'll tell you, Baptist preachers will tell you, they'll say, unless you are saved, you cannot understand the Bible. It is a sealed book. You can read it cover to cover. Many atheists do. But because it is a metaphysical book, the true meaning of what's being said is sealed to you, because you don't have the Holy Spirit, in their vernacular, to interpret what you're reading. So yeah, this information, honestly, it never really went away. The sacred gnosis or gnosis, and just a side note, anybody who tells you that Gnosticism started with Simon Magus has got their head up their ass, okay? Pyramids, just saying. But anyway, the sacred gnosis, which is looking for God within, finding God within, which is extremely detrimental to any power structure, political or religious. That's why Gnostics have been the scourge of the power structure, because Gnostics do not need anybody in between them and the divine. And so, well, if you're trying to build a power structure, a pyramid scheme, where there's an elite at the top, you got to get rid of them bastards, because they're going to shake the foundations, because what they're running around saying is you don't need anybody else outside of yourself. God's within each and every one of us. So right. The actual knowledge and the gnosis, it never went away. Nature bespeaks its creator. Nature itself just around you, if you take the time to really seek God, will speak to you. It'll give you the answers that you're looking for.
Well, this is like I was saying many times, that the truth is that the law, that the law given to us by the divine has been represented to us in natural presentation. Mm-hmm. It has shown us the way already. This is not a matter of debate as far as I'm concerned. There is a reason why everything is structured the way it is, This equation goes well beyond all of these, people that tell you, look, I have the answers. I have the answers. In fact, anybody who comes to you and tells you that they actually possess all the answers is somebody who wants to be part of that bridge between you and the divine. You are, in fact, the one who has the ability to get there all on your own, because you're already there.
Buddha always said, I cannot tell you how to become enlightened. I can only tell you how I became enlightened. That's what Buddha said.
Correct.
But you were talking about Semiramis, and right now it is, we are going through Passover. And can I go off on a biblical tangent? Is that cool?
I'm fine with it. I think just one more comment to Sherri, though, really quickly. This is really why a lot of the, because you and I understand the whole thing about being persecuted. Anybody who has challenged the power structure in that they don't require the go-between, that answers a lot of questions for you about the persecution of people who practice like you do, people who practice like I do, people who, stepped outside of the accepted norms, like we were talking about in the first hour, that woman who was racked and then tortured to death, that we were talking about historically, simply stated.
I mean, honestly, when I was listening to that story in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, there's way more to that story. Like, because there's no way in hell that I mean, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I really feel like that there's more.
But think about this. It depends on the intensity of the power structure's desire to hold on to power, as to how they will treat those who speak against it. In some places, you do get yourself killed for speaking out against the government. In some places, like I talked about North Korea last week and this week too, there is literally a dead man who is at the top of the North Korean government. They have installed permanently a leader who is dead. And everybody else is an administrator. No, I'm not kidding you. Look it up. Kim Jong-un. Yeah, Kim Jong-un is, allegedly the supreme leader, but he's only the supreme leader because he has the sacred bloodline, according to the story told to his people, from his grandfather and his father. You understand? And one of them, I forget which, it's his grandfather or his father, is permanently installed as the eternal leader of North Korea. So you've got to understand that that's the way it works. They're literally the go-between for God. It's that simple. And that's the way they work. And the more intense that is pushed, the more intensely they push down on people. And that is the reason why people are targeted and persecuted. Do you get where I'm going with this, Sherri? I might have dumbfounded her for a moment. But you can see why I bring this up, right, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, she just left.
Did we? Well, she just Nah, probably it's a technical issue, but you see where I'm going, though,
Yeah.
is that profoundly displays exactly what you were just saying, is that the people that want to be in power over others in truth, okay, are placing themselves in between all of you, the peasants, the whatever, the common folks, all right, however you want to put it, and God. That is the idea.
Yeah.
In order to get the greatness which can be bestowed upon you. As a matter of fact, they are the purveyors of God's laws, God's ethical whatever. We have, the moral, the moral blessing to go forward with our leadership, et cetera. Think about all of those statements, put it in that context in your mind. When you see the rise of powerful people who seem to be authoritarian, who seem to be the most intensely authoritarian, even if they don't mention God, even if they don't mention religion, if you put them in that context and understand them in that way, every single one of these powerful people who steps on those below them, who doesn't rule in a benevolent fashion, because rulership never seems to end up in a benevolent a benevolent conclusion. But the thing is, anybody who is extremely excessively authoritarian can be explained in exactly that way. And the people they step on are those that dare to imagine that they don't require that supreme authority from that man.
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead with what you were going to say.
Yeah, I mean, anybody, and I know you've had it too, but anybody who's ever had like a metaphysical moment in their life where they kind of pierce through the veil and see beyond what you're conditioned to see, it gives you an influx of power when you realize who you really are in the universe. And everybody that I personally know who's went through this kundalini or awakening or whatever you want to call it, I don't really care. If you've had it, you know what I'm talking about. When all the illusions break away and you're catapulted into a whole new existence. Everybody that I've ever met that's been through it gets this overwhelming sense of power, and rightfully so. However, it's like whenever they try to percolate on all the information and energy that they got, there is a temptation. There is a weighing in the balance of the ego. As far as what will an individual do with this power. For example, if you go to the Old Testament and you find Solomon being asked by the angel of the Lord, what do you want? Do you want riches or wisdom? You know, the hierarchy in the spiritual realm, when a person is chosen to rule over or administrate in the place of the divine to a people, they're always weighed in the balance. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't pass the test, and you and I both know, as practitioners of the mystic arts or the craft or whatever, you and I both know we've had long discussions about people who have come to us to be mentored, and ultimately what always happens is the pupil tries to do what?
Yeah, it tries to become a master a long time before they even know what's happening.
Yeah.
And that usually turns out very bad because it's a greed more than anything else. Greed, as in, But go ahead.
Yeah, it always turns out that the pupil goes all Anakin Skywalker, and they're like, I'm going to overthrow them. Well, if you take somebody who has learned that they can, dabble with metaphysics or other dimensions, and you put them, say, at the head of state, that's a real heavy temptation, and it is what it is.
Sure.
So, but I don't know. But what's the true, because I've been really meditating on this as of late during Lent. Do you guys know the story of Passover?
Well, Sherri, do you know it?
I do. Kind of. I'm sure I know what they tell about, the Christian version. Is that what you mean?
All right. Can I summate it real quick? Maybe we can glean something from it.
Well, yeah, look, there's actually more than one story of Passover. Generally speaking, when people refer to Passover, they're talking about, the practice in Judaism, a time period where, the Savior does not quite arrive, Okay. And it's please, give us the really good description, because I don't really know how to put that into a good summation.
I mean, basically, when you get to Passover, and it's a great story. It doesn't matter what your faith is. Basically, you're going back into antiquity. It's not historical. The Bible says it's an allegory because we know that there was no, anyway. According to the story, you had a bunch of Jews in Egypt that were slaves, and they had forgotten about, the God of their fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They didn't even know about him. It had been so long. And of course, you have, the decree that goes out from the Pharaoh that all the firstborn of the Jews are to be, killed at birth. And then, of course, Moses is saved, like any savior character. He's put into a reed basket, put in, into the Nile. And then Pharaoh's daughter actually finds him, dips him out, and calls him Moses, and raises Moses as an Egyptian. So he becomes royalty in the Egyptian court. And then as the story goes, one day he sees his people being oppressed, and he kills an Egyptian guy. And when some people find out about it, he flees Egypt because there's like a warrant out for him. They're going to take his head, and he goes out out into the land. And while he's out there, the God of his forefathers, appears to him as the angel of the Lord, and there's a burning bush and all this, and of course he's dumbfounded. He didn't even know this cat existed, and here this cat is talking to him. And says he wants him to go into Egypt and tell Pharaoh to let my people go, but it's not going to go down that easy, and it's all, this God defined, he says his name is I am that I am, okay? Mm-hmm. And so, you get the story of Moses going in and confronting Pharaoh and saying, let my people go, and of course Pharaoh hardens his heart continuously, and until finally, God's like, look, here's the deal, dude, if you don't, let my people go, speaking through Moses and Aaron, I'm going to send the death angel throughout all of Egypt, and the firstborn of everybody's house is going to die. Okay, everybody's going to die that doesn't perform the Passover. And, of course, the ritual is in Exodus, and it basically says that all the people of Israel had to slaughter a lamb and take the blood of the lamb on a hyssop, like a small hand brush, straw, and wipe the blood on the two doorposts and the lintel, which is kind of like the shape of a cross, but whatever. And according to the instructions of this God, him and the death angel, which is a dual role that God played, because in one part of Exodus it says I, and then later it says the death angel, which means it's the same cat. He's able to bilocate into different forms, just food for thought. So God and the death angel go over Egypt, and wherever there's blood on the door, he just passes over, and everybody in there is okay. And so that's basically the story of Passover, right? Now, historically, we know that there was no Jews in slavery in Egypt like that. I think there's one inscription of the word Jew in Luxor, okay? And basically it means an untrained worker. There's no archaeological evidence that this massive exodus took place. This is allegory.
Not only that, but I mean, the beginning of the story where you have the Savior placed on a basket who was spared after the firstborn was being slaughtered and all that is actually a story that existed before that scripture was put together. I'm not undermining its value.
Now, so last night, I'm doing my thing underneath the full moon, the Passover moon, and I'm reading the book of Exodus. And I've read this, countless times before, but I've never really heard any good commentary. Okay, but if you go to Exodus chapter 4, all right, and I'm not going to read much of it, but it's giving you this narrative where God introduces himself to Moses, hey, how's it going? Moses really doesn't know anything about this guy, but he knows he can make a bush not burn, and he can appear as an angel of the Lord and do all these other cool things, so he's going to listen. So God's given him this narrative, and then it's almost, not that I'm saying that they added it later, but it's almost like they added it later, okay? In the middle of the narrative, if you get to, let's see here. Okay, yeah, I'm in the wrong place.
Well, again, it's fascinating because, like I said, there are similar stories to this where I if memory serves me correctly, I think Horus goes through the same same situation.
All right, verse 24. Let me read this real quick because you're touching exactly where I wanted you to. Never mind. Verse 24 says, And it came to pass by the way in the inn that the Lord met him, speaking of Moses, and sought to kill him. Then Zipporah, that's his wife, took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son, and cast it at his feet, and said, Surely a bloody husband art thou to me. So he, speaking of God, let him go. Then she said, A bloody husband thou art, because of the circumcision. And then the story keeps going. It's like 3 verses that's put in there that with no backstory, no explanation whatsoever, that as soon as Moses, his wife Zipporah, and their child get into Egypt at the end, God comes into town to kill Moses, and it doesn't tell you why. And so then Zipporah circumcises their son right then and there and throws the foreskin, it says at his feet, but it doesn't really identify who the he is. We just know that she cuts off the foreskin, throws it at one of their feet, and that's enough to keep God from killing Moses. And so I'm reading that last night, and then I went to another, to a Christian, and I said, have you ever thought about that? What are the Bible writers trying to say right there with this 3 verses of a side story that makes no sense? But if you actually look at what's going on here, and, when Constantine started the Roman Catholic Church and then burned, the Library of Alexandria was burned, which had all of this knowledge going back to ancient Egypt. To me, if you take Moses, Zipporah, and their son, and you take a transparency of Isis, Horus, and Osiris, it's exactly what that is. It is the link between ancient Egypt and this entire mythos of the resurrecting God into the Son through the feminine divine, right?
Right.
So, and if you go back to Egypt, what you find is, Osiris was betrayed by Seth was chopped up into 14 pieces, and Isis, through magic, found all of his body parts except the phallus, and she replaced it with a golden obelisk, impregnated herself to give birth to Horus, the resurrecting sun god. And so the Egyptians would build, like in London City, London, Washington, D.C., and the Vatican, a dome with an obelisk to represent the resurrection of the Father through the Son, and then a continuous cycle, And so is this a bad thing? I mean, obviously, you talk about Semiramis. Well, Semiramis is Isis by another name. It's the same principle, as above, so below, as within, so without. It's trying to tell us something. Now, the Catholic Church, when they destroyed the Library of Alexandria, well, why did they do that? Well, they were protecting their power structure. And what's a threat to the power structure is knowledge of this system, resurrection. And so you have people like the Freemasons, the Knights Templar, and all these secret societies that for a long time had to hide this knowledge, not because, they're into population control and all that good stuff, but if they didn't, man, the Pope and his cronies were going to have him executed. This whole idea that goes back to the pyramids of apotheosis and going through the initiation of the pyramid to face death, realize it's just an illusion and that we're all God, right? Mm-hmm. And, so I don't look at like Freemasons. I believe Freemasons are very much, if you watch Star Wars, it's very much like that. There is one force, it's neutral. There's 2 different factions that can use it. I've met Freemasons that are very, very intent on some very nefarious things, but I've also met some Freemasons who are actually for the betterment of mankind, the brotherhood of man, depending on the lodge. So, to me, I think it would be remiss upon us if we didn't, especially people like you and Sherri and me, who were into the metaphysical, not to take advantage of the energy, this window of Lent and Passover for purposes other than, I don't know, a new world order. Maybe it's incumbent upon us to do our particular crafts during these windows of energy to piggyback their frequency to bring about a new order of the ages, because the truth is always very, very parallel, to a lie, or vice versa. So, whenever I'm looking at Exodus and I'm looking at Christian stuff, it's obvious that the Bible writers were trying to point to Egypt and this whole process of apotheosis with Horus, Isis, and Osiris.
Right. No, that's all entirely accurate, and this is why the story is retold and retold, because quite honestly, even that story with Horus and Isis is not the first time or the only time we see it. It's actually told over and over again to various people all over the planet in a slightly different fashion. And it's pretty interesting to me that, as you said, when burning the Library of Alexandria, all that did is preclude the accessibility to that knowledge for something other than that particular group. And that particular group, to me, is not working for the betterment of man or the brotherhood of man in any way, shape, or form. And you can take these things. They are just like any other blade that is sharpened on both sides. They can be used to do very great and good and productive things, or they can be used to slaughter.
Well, I will.
And
let me interject this, Chuck, because I really do want to get your take before the end of this show. I find that this whole idea that we're talking about, I mean, look, you have Freemasons that founded this country, and on the Great Seal of the American dollar, you have a definitive date on the back of your $1 bill for the return of Osiris. And that was December the 21st, 2012. Okay? People who think that nothing happened on that day, give me a break. Something happened on that day, and the Freemasons and the other Gnostics knew about it, and they'd been telling you for centuries, or you would not see that emblem everywhere you look, which is the Eye of Ra, the Eye of Horus or Osiris, or however you want to interpret the sun god returning on that date. Now, what I find funny about that is what's going on over in Syria right now, because anybody in Christian circles, this is so funny, the people who believe in an imminent return of Christ, or what they call the rapture, will tell you they believe it's imminent, which means can happen at any moment. However, the only prophecy that has yet to occur in Christian eschatology is the destruction of Damascus. Christians in Baptist circles around the world are looking at Damascus, the city of Damascus, because the Bible says that before the coming of the Lord, Damascus will be a ruinous heap, never to be inhabited again. And so now, after 2012, we look at what's going on in Syria, and we have to kind of pause for a second and say, what is this idiotic move that our government has made in Syria? What are they doing? Are they trying to fulfill something? Is it a self-fulfilling prophecy? Because I guarantee you, especially in the South, Chuck, you're not going to find a single solitary politician that is not in the pocket of Israel. You're not. You can't get elected in the South unless you back Israel 100%. You can't. And so now we see that we're doing something that's completely the antithesis of what this country was founded upon, which is entangling alliances and all this policing of the world. And you're trying to trigger something in Syria that could cause a global thing, and it's all biblical prophecy that will bring about the coming of one man to rule with an iron rod that Christians call Jesus. When in all actuality, the Bible says that guy is what they know as of the Antichrist. That's that guy. And so they have it backwards. But there it is. I find it ironic that we're celebrating Passover. All this is going on since 2012, and now you have this thing happening in Syria that could well bring that prophecy to light, and Damascus could become a ruinous heap.
Well, the good news for those that are not anxious to rapture, okay, is that in my estimation, what we did over there, the trumpets did over there, really was a sucker's play. They made it look like they were doing something so that they could, continue the puppet show on the world stage. And I think that somebody gave them the opportunity to do more, and it wasn't done. We have a serious sort of puppet show being put on to tell people that, hey, look, you know what? Trump is actually confronting Russia and all that, and therefore couldn't possibly be in his pocket. And there is, stay tuned to Syria, because there's a lot more to come, and there's going to be a lot more people that I got to tell you, Daniel, it's the one thing that worries me about the deeply dogmatic Christian is that I think they're anxious to bring about the rapture.
They are.
Dude,
I remember going to Bible studies where they were absolutely giddy. Anytime there was a conflict anywhere near, certain key areas, they were absolutely giddy because they believed, that at any minute some homeboy on a horse, some carpenter dude, and the Bible actually never says Jesus was a carpenter, by the way. It says his freaking dad was. But anyway, you're not ever going to find anywhere in the Bible that Jesus was a carpenter. Nowhere. Just food for thought. But I would see them get absolutely giddy when any outbreak would happen in the Middle East, because they were like, it's about to happen. We're about to get raptured. But they believe it, man, and they operate in the ones who are politically active. When they get inside the structure of the political party, they operate from that belief, man. They're absolutely giddy about it, and they're like, "Well, there's nothing we could really do about it. It's in the Bible. It's prophetic." It's can be scary if you're in that vibration, but I've read the end of the book. The good guys win.
Yeah, look, I understand that. But man, it is strange food for thought when you consider that that's the mindset. Daniel Lewis Crumpton is the guy behind downloadedcontent.com. Also the author of Then Came the Flood. He was our guest in the second hour, despite minor delays and all that. Sherri Wisdom, my co-host, wrote the whole way through and got into some odd areas tonight. And of course, Mark Windows telling us about a blood-soaked area near the city of London. What an odd show for a Wednesday on the Ochelli Effect. But we'll be back tomorrow with some other stuff, folks. And Daniel, I thank you for giving us that very, very calm ending.
You're welcome. I try.
Have a good night, everybody. And no matter what, don't allow them to rapture you right away, because there's a whole lot more to life left. Let's enjoy it. Take care.
Downloaded content podcast. Download content.